Hello and welcome to the shop. This time I want to talk to you a little bit about the logo on my hat. The Worldwide Woodturners Club is a club that was started by Captain Eddie Castellan about 6 years ago, I believe, with the goal of bringing woodturners together in an environment where we can learn and grow without judgment. We meet every week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to worldwidewoodturners.org, click the little button that says click to go to meeting. We meet via Zoom and we have demonstrations weekly from woodturners all over the world, all over the United States, Canada, England, Australia, New Zealand. We have members worldwide. We are the Worldwide Woodturners Club. I happen to be the editor of our newsletter, which we publish every 2 weeks, and it is a collection of the work of all of our members. The only requirement to be published in the newsletter is that you email me photos of your work in high enough quality that I can put them into the layout. It's distributed in a PDF in a printable format. We distribute it both on our Facebook page, Worldwide Woodturners, and on worldwidewoodturners.org. I would like to encourage you to check Worldwide Woodturners Club out. It is a really good group of turners whose whole goal is to share their love of woodturning and help each other improve and become better. And that's what we're working on today, is a project that came to us as a challenge from our demonstrator, Doug Miller. Last week's demonstration, by the time you see this, it'll be 2 weeks ago. But Doug said, hey, I would like to challenge you to turn something from a square and make it so that we can see that it started square. And I've been thinking about it and I've been wrestling with it. What am I going to make? What am I going to do to meet Doug's challenge? And I remembered that I have some very, very old barn wood. This is sassafras. It comes from a barn in Indiana, I believe, that was over 100 years old when it was taken down. It's not perfectly square, but it's square enough to meet the requirements for the challenge. My challenge is to make a piece with this and try to maintain that rough sawn texture. I was going to get it on the bandsaw and on the belt sander and smooth it out and square it up and make it perfect. But then I thought, wait a minute, some of the glory of this wood is the fact that this is very old barn wood. And we want to see that texture, that wonderful sawing. I want to see that. I want to celebrate the fact that this is a very old piece of barnwood, rather than take that away and make it something shiny and polished. So that's what we're going to try to do. Obviously, the two ends are going to be finished. The inside, as I hollow it, because I'm going to make a box, is going to be finished. But this piece of a beam or a post, I want to kind of savor that wonderful rough sawn look. I just love the texture of the sawmills here. I think it looks really cool. So we're going to get it between centers, and we're going to see what we can do to make a square box out of this chunk of barnwood. All right, my first observation is this is in fact not sassafras. I got two kinds of wood from the same barn, sassafras and pecan. This is pecan. It's a little denser, a little harder than the sassafras. Doesn't smell as good as the sassafras. The sassafras smells really good. But still good wood, good to work with. I'm going to clean up this end and kind of square it off a little with a square end scraper that I made, a box scraper that I made in the shop here. Now that's not going to be the final surface, but I want to try to make sure that's even, and I'll clean up. I got a little bit of a ridge here. We'll clean that up real quick, just so I have a good mount to the chuck. I am turning at a very high speed. I've actually got my little Laguna 1216 maxed out. There's a reason for that. I was doing a practice piece with some walnut that I did make square and sand and was all fancy. And I was only turning at about 1800 RPM. And when I came in straight in the side in order to part my lid from my body, all of the ridges flaked off. And in thinking about what had happened and why that occurred, I realized that I was only turning at 1800 RPM, and coming in straight at these raised corners, I just was moving too slow for the blade of my beading and parting tool to actually come through and cut it cleanly. Now this one I'm going to do a little different. I'm not going to put a tenon on here of this material because I want to try and keep the saw marks matching as closely as possible. So we're going to use a thin curve parting tool. We're going to come through here, and then we're going to use an insert to be the joint between the lid and the body of the box. Again, the point is to maintain this wonderful saw marks from the mill. It was obviously a round saw blade, and I could probably figure out the math. Any geniuses could probably figure out. I'm not a genius. Anybody who with good math skills could probably figure out the circumference of the blade just from this little section and arc. There is a mathematical formula. I know it's doable. I'm not the one who can do it, but I would imagine that we're probably looking at a 26-inch to maybe 36-inch blade, saw blade. So a round saw blade, a disc saw blade mill, fairly large, is what cut this beautiful board. And that is just, I think the saw marks are absolutely gorgeous. I don't want to interfere with these saw marks in any way, shape, or form. Now, the other thing I can do to preserve these saw marks is put this in a chuck, hollow it, and put a lid on it, or inset a lid into it. I want it to be two halves. I want it to be a traditional box with the lid and the body being part of the same piece of wood. So we're going to lose a little bit of our marks match, but I'm going to do my best to make sure that what we lose is minimal. So let's get this in a chuck and part it. Well, tenon on this side and then part it. See where that's burning? That tells me that I need to sharpen my gouge. All right, we have a freshly sharpened spindle gouge. That's a huge difference. Well, if anything wants to teach you to keep your tools sharp, try turning some 100-year-old pecan with a dull spindle gouge. That'll teach you real fast the importance of having sharp tools. Okay. So again, we got a little bit of variance here. Ultimately, this is going to get turned away, but I want to straighten that out. So I will bring my box scraper back again and just clean this surface and even this out. Now, the reason this is so loud is because it's square. So basically what I'm doing is making a fan, and that's okay. Just don't let that unsettle you. This makes a lot of noise when you're turning your square piece. It has a tendency to sound like a helicopter blade or an airplane propeller. Be aware of that. It's just noise. This piece is turning very nice, smooth. I am well balanced between centers, even though it's not perfectly square. It's close enough that it's well balanced. So the speed is not terribly, it's fast. We're turning very fast, but the speed is really not as bad as it seems. It's just the fact that this sounds like a fan because it's spinning, because it's square. Now, that being said, if you are not comfortable turning at, what am I turning at? 3,600 RPM, slow down. But when we come straight in to these corners here with a parting tool, that's going to create a problem. If you're turning too slow, it's going to want to flake these edges right off and ruin our square piece. So speed is a necessity in order to make that process function correctly. We're going to part this with a thin curve parting tool, and the challenge here, because I want the joint to be as perfect as possible, is to cut straight, absolutely straight, 90 degrees. That is going to be a challenge. I also need to decide which side I want to be the top and which the bottom. And the blade was curving, pointed that direction, so the board went through the wood that way on this side and this side and this side. Okay, the board went through the wood that direction. So I think that's going to be my top. And you can tell that because of the direction the blade is pointing. So this will be the top. We want it roughly to match the golden mean. So if we put our golden mean caliper up here, we're going to make a little line right here. And this is not perfectly square and it's got a rough edge, but we're just going to try to at least make it so that we can see that line. As it's turning, that'll guide us in parting the pieces of wood. This is the most difficult part of this process, is this cut right here. Everything else is basic box turning. This part right here, cutting straight at a 90-degree angle, this is the most difficult part of the process. I am certain that it is a possibility to fashion a jig in order to maintain a straight angle with my parting tool. So you know what? Let's do that. Let's make a jig. What I have here is the hollowing rest, the 9-inch hollowing rest from Barnwood Tools. I consider this to be an extra large box rest. It has 3 positions. I am currently mounted with the tool post in the center. It has one at 6 inches and one at 9 inches. So it gives you some variation, ability to move your fulcrum into the interior of a piece that you're hollowing. I have it lined up exactly parallel to the bedway of my lathe. This is not square, so I have to use the bedway of my lathe as the reference. So that is lined up parallel to the bedway of my lathe. And I have my T-square here, and just a little piece of Baltic birch plywood. And what I want to do is I put blue painter's tape down. I just want to CA glue the plywood to the tape, and that's going to give me, and I'm locked down. Everything's locked down. It's not going to move. What that's going to do is give me a guide that's going to go straight across, and I can just set my parting tool against this and work it in and start my cut and get a straight cut. Then all I have to do is peel the tape and the jig goes away. So a couple of drops of CA glue here. We will spritz that with accelerant. Just a touch. Doesn't need to be much. That was probably overkill, but that's okay. All right, we're square. And if we're not on the line, we can move this back and forth because we're using our eyes to judge parallel with the bedway of the lathe. So we can speed this one up. Now my tool rest is a little bit low. And I don't know that I necessarily want to reposition it. I'm almost all the way around. You can see how we're out of square a tiny bit. This is a bit of a nerve-wracking cut. I'm going to put another burr. That burr is gone. I'm going to put another fresh burr on here. One thing that's going on here is that my cut is not wider than my tool, and that creates an issue where this can start to bind and wobble. You see that? So we're going to have to step over and widen the cut, and again, using my guide, I want to be perfectly at 90 degrees. What I'm going to do is keeping my eye on that bedway of the lathe. I'm just going to slide my whole tool rest over so that I can continue to use that jig to guide my cut. I guess another way you could do this is just to slap it on the bandsaw and cut through with the bandsaw. And the bandsaw is about the same kerf as, at least my bandsaw blade is about the same kerf as this thin kerf parting tool. And probably that would be the safer route. Because coming in with a thin kerf parting tool, this is not purpose built. This is a recycled Sawzall blade. Coming in with this tool is a little harrowing. And now I've got to slide it back, and I'm probably losing more material than I really want to. But when you're doing this on the lathe, it's a dangerous cut with that thin kerf parting tool, and the way to make it safer is to make your kerf wider than your tool. That's too far. At this point, I can actually stick the blade in there and use my cut to square it up. That actually worked really well. Not hitting, so we're going to go a little bit deeper, and then we're just going to switch to a thin kerf pole saw and saw through the rest with the lathe stopped. No matter what you see on YouTube, don't use a pole saw with your lathe turning. That's a good way to lose some fingers. So the other thing, actually, you know what? At this point now I'll use the bandsaw, because I've got a good miter gauge on my bandsaw, and I should be able to line this up and just go zip right through it. So we're going to put it on the bandsaw and finish parting it again for safety. If I was using a heavier parting tool, it would be a little bit easier to do, because this is flexible. This can create some issues. So if you use a recycled Sawzall blade, remember this is very flexible, and it can do some funny things. So just be aware and be cautious. We're going to put this on the bandsaw, finish cutting it. The jig worked. This is a good idea. But at the same time, with the saw that I have, or with the parting tool that I've got, I'm just not confident as I get further and further over the tool rest that it's going to maintain stability. And as soon as that starts to wobble, it'll catch, and a catch with that is ugly. It'll come down like this at that speed and pinch, and we better to avoid that. So we'll go to the bandsaw real quick. We'll be right back. Chuck is just slightly smaller than the size of the square here. I was able to just leave it on the chuck, and two, you can see where that was burning because that little tool was in there, and cutting causes heat, and so you can see where there's some burning even though we had fresh burrs on it. So I think bandsaw was probably the smartest choice to do. But I also think starting my cut with the parting tool in order to get a good square line was also a good idea. So both, and also if you don't have a bandsaw, you do have that option of using a parting tool. Just be very, very careful. Now we're going to come back in with a square end scraper and just clean this off very lightly. We're going to use a traditional 90-degree square end scraper. It's got a good burr on it. And we're going to come from the inside out. Tool rest is a tiny bit low. With a traditional scraper like this, you want to have a slight downward angle. You want your tool rest a little bit high. That allows it to, that helps prevent catching. That really wants to dig. You got to be very light when you touch here. Another reason why you want it aiming downward. We're going to be very, very light-handed, and in fact, that now took it down the major raised sections of wood. We're going to come in with a sanding disc. Slow the lathe down. And just square that up. Probably need to do a little bit more. And in fact, this is a 7 by 5/8 an 11 TPI sanding disc from Baxter Tools, or 7 by 5/8 by 11. It's got a 1 in 8 TPI thread in it, which is the size of my lathe, and I happen to have from Baxter Tools as well a 1 in 8 TPI to Morse taper adapter, which allows me to mount my sanding disc on my tailstock and know that it's completely parallel or completely perpendicular. So I can come in here nice and close, lock my sanding disc down, and I'm not going to put a lot of pressure. This is not a heavy pressure thing. You put pressure in there, you're going to lock everything up, you're going to jam it. I'm just going to touch it. And that was the ejector. I touched it, back it up. And you can't see it, but I can see it. We're going to do that again and just come down a little tiny bit more, but that's going to give me a nice flat surface there. So there's another method that you can use to really make sure that that's squared up, because again, we're going to try to match the grain, the saw marks from the top to the bottom of the piece. So we're going to extremes in order to leave the surface as raw and rough as it already is. All right, we've got a pretty decent surface here. It'll get cleaned up a little bit more as we keep working. This is the lid of our box. At this stage, how wide we make our box interior is pretty arbitrary. We're just going to do the standard box turning procedure. This is end grain. So we're going to come from the inside out using the drill and what I call the drill and push technique rather than the drill and pull. I have a 3/8" spindle gouge that has a very steep angle on it in order to be able to come in and then ride the bevel out for hollowing the interior of the box. And we just use the procedure. About a 45-degree angle in, drill. And then I don't like to pull the tool because I want to ride the bevel. I push the handle away from my body. That's why I consider it the drill and push method. Lock your hand at the fulcrum. And so you're using your tool rest as a fulcrum both this way and this way. And then you can slide the tool through your hand. In order to make an even base, an even bottom of the cut. But that entire cut is supported. You'll notice you're not hearing or seeing any tool chatter. There's no tool chatter. All right, we'll stop and look. We can make that wider. Actually, I think that's a pretty good width. Now we can certainly make that deeper. We've got a lot of room here, so we'll go a little bit deeper. We can turn the tool rest in a bit, keep our fulcrum closer to the point of work. Turn it by hand. After you adjust the tool rest, turn it by hand to make sure you're not making any contact. We'll deal with the sidewalls in a minute. Right now we're worried about depth and making sure we have a clean cut. You can see there's no torn grain in there. There's a little bit of tool marks. We'll clean that up. But we have a nice clean cut that's a sandable surface. Although the outside of this is going to be coarse, we're going to make the inside shiny. All right, I think that's pretty good depth-wise. Now you can see we're removing a lot of material very fast. Oh, I can go another 1/2 inch, but we are removing a considerable amount of material very quickly. This is a very effective method. Arguably, if you're used to doing it, I think you can consider it to be almost as fast as Richard Raffin's back hollowing technique, which I find personally to be absolutely terrifying. Okay, that's it. That's our depth. We're not going to go any deeper. That gives us about a 1/2 inch at the top, so that we can make sure that we finish that surface in whatever way we desire. We're going to go ahead now and do a little bit of scraping and clean up the side and make sure we have a square mortise here to inset our collar. We're gonna insert a collar. Actually, the lid is going to receive the collar. The collar is going to go on the base, but we're going to use an insert as our joint rather than losing more material to cut a mortise and a tenon. So this is just a repurposed 1/2 inch bowl scraper that I've made a little negative rake rounded inside scraper. Tool rest is a little bit low. We want to raise the tool rest up a hair. Oh yeah, we got a good, nice, clean surface. It's scraping very well. Pecan is very, very hard, so it accepts scraping. We'll do a tiny bit of work on the bottom there. And now we need to make sure that we square up our recess, our mortise. So we're going to come back in with our square end scraper, eyeball the bedway of the lathe, and you notice the tool rest is high. That's so that the bottom of the tool, I've sharpened at a little bit of an angle, but I don't want the bottom of the tool to push on the curve and shove it out, which would give me an angle cut. I want it to be square. So again, line up the tool with the bedway of the lathe. And that is the mortise for our friction fit lid. And we can make sure that that's square by coming in with our vernier caliper and setting it to that diameter, which we need anyway. And if you don't see any air between the jaws of the caliper and the side, you have square sides, because that is machined perfectly parallel. We're good to go. That is the mortise, the inside of the lid. All we need now is do a little bit of sanding. Sanding will make the tiny bit of burn that's left over here disappear. Sanding the inside and make the inside look nice and pretty. So I will get to that off camera. I'm pretty happy with that surface. What we're going to do is take our vernier caliper. We're going to just triple, quadruple check, reconfirm that we have the diameter. And we're there. We're going to go ahead and mark that here. Slow the lathe down, touch only this tip. Way too big. There we go, that's closer. All right, now, this isn't as exacting of a dimension as you might think it is. It really doesn't matter how wide we make our insert as long as this side fits. So I want this to be a little bit narrower than the lid in order to fit correctly, but I need to know where I'm aiming for. Same thing, drill and pull or drill and push, however you want to think about it. The hollow will come out close to it, but not to it, so that we can insert a ring that's going to be what fits in there and creates the mortise. So it's going to essentially be a double-ended mortise. It's going to fit in the body and be secured in the body, glued in there, and then it's going to fit into the lid with a friction fit. At this point, we're getting quite a ways off of the end of the tool rest. This is where having a box rest becomes very, very handy, because what it does is moves the fulcrum of your lever inside the piece so that you maintain mechanical advantage. Yet another fine piece of kit from Bestwood Tools, the box rest. I use this thing almost daily. Anytime I'm making larger size boxes where I need to get inside the interior to hollow, I will use this tool because it gives me the ability to get in there deep and maintain my mechanical advantage. Touch low. And I've got a pretty stubby tool. This is difficult to do with a short tool. Watch your jokes. It's a family channel. But the other thing you can do is continue doing this work with a scraper, and having this nice flat platform really gives you a good purchase to do that safely. So either way, the box rest is pretty essential. And again, you'll notice I'm still doing the drill and push method. I'm coming in with the tool at 45 degrees, drilling, and then my hand is locked and I am pushing the tool away, the handle of the tool away from my body. I'm not pulling, I'm not dragging the blade through. I am pushing that tip and allowing that cutting corner right there and the bevel, I'm allowing it to ride the bevel around. And that gives me a really nice clean cut. Now here I'm pulling, so that's a scrape at that point. So I'm getting a nice clean slicing cut down here in the middle. But then I'm getting a scrape coming up the side. More of a shear scrape with the wood coming down across the bottom wing of the blade. And we're close to depth. I don't think we're quite there. Oh, we've got an inch. We can actually move our tool rest in a little deeper. Again, maintaining the leverage by moving the fulcrum closer to the work point, which is where the tool is cutting the wood. But I'm running out of space here because I've got a shorter, it's a pretty worn tool, so I think we're going to switch to a box scraper. And I actually have this box scraper that I shaped that gives me a nice round inside corner. I've got plenty of tool shaft to work with. The rest is just a skosh high. That was quite the catch. That was quite the catch. What happened is, as I got to the bottom, I had surface contact all the way around, which was more than the inside of that wanted to take. I was being too aggressive with my cut, and it gouged down at the bottom. It dug in deep down at the bottom. Something to be aware of. That was 100% me rushing. All right, we're back square. Thankfully, we didn't damage this surface of this area in any way. So we have to be a little bit more cognizant and cautious down across the bottom there. Again, I was just rushing. I was pushing too fast. Slow down. Take your time. I'm dealing with rising temperatures and a limited amount of time to work in the shop before it just becomes too hot here in the North Carolina sun. I'm going to switch to a rounder tool with a negative rake. That was not negative rake. This, I think, will be a little bit of a gentler tool presentation, and I should be able to smooth out that bottom. Thankfully, the only really bad spot is down there in the bottom. So I was just too aggressive, got too excited. Good. Okay, I cleaned that right up. I need to just level off the bottom a tiny bit. I still have so much more leverage because the tool rest is moving all the way down in there that could have been, if I was hanging way over the end of a tool rest of a bar, that would have been absolutely catastrophic, and it probably would have shattered the whole piece. So it pays to have a box rest. It also pays to slow down. Take your time. I am racing the temperature, but I can always come back out tomorrow morning when it's cool again, if I have to. Lesson learned, slow down, take your time, breathe. Let the tool do the work, don't try to force it. Okay, here we have a piece of cherry left over from an old project that I pulled out of my bucket O cutoffs. And I'm going to double check. Nice finish in here, nice sanded. No finish yet, but it's sanded. I double check my diameter here with my vernier caliper. I know that my walls are parallel using the same technique I used on the lid. Slow the lathe down, touch only the point that is towards you. Transfer that diameter. And we're going to sneak up on that. So we will come in with a beading and parting tool in a peeling type cut and try to make sure that we make those walls perfectly parallel. We'll get close, but not there. And before we start trying to fit it or anything, we want to make sure we have straight sides. So we will just come back in with our vernier caliper and lay it. It's obviously too big, but we're going to lay it on there and look down. And if we see light between the caliper jaw and the wood, we know that that's off. That's not square. I don't see any light. It looks pretty darn good. It might be a little bit low right here, means it's wider at the base, but that's easily taken care of. I have plenty of space. That's why I stayed short of my mark. I have lots of space. I can also look at the side of this tenon and the rail of my lathe. And that's supposed to be straight. So that's another way you can judge it. You use your beating and parting tool, your 1/4 inch beating and parting tool, kind of like a 1/4 inch skew. Exactly like a 1/4 inch skew. Again, trying not to get to our mark yet. This needs to be an exact fit. So this is going to go into the base and be glued securely into the base. So we're going to fit it to the base. And it is just a hair over, which is exactly what we want. Again, checking to see. I got those sides cleaned up very well. It's still a hair wider at the base, but that's okay because that's going to be turned down. Once it's mounted in there, that's actually going to be turned down to fit the lid. So we have some room to play here. We're closer, but should not be. Yeah, we're right there. So you can see a tiny bit of our little edge there. We are right there, right at the cusp of fitting. Again, check. Good and parallel, got good straight walls. And very, very light cut, a skew cut. Check it and see. There needs to be room for the glue to get in. That's literally all I'm taking off now. That's a good fit. Now I have a problem. I need that fit to be tight, basically to be perfect, but it's so tight that I've got air trapped in there, and it's going to make it hard for me to actually get it down in there. So, well, just a way to quickly fix it is to just drill right through so that air can escape. I can drive that on completely. That's what we're going to do. Some Parfix C400. Which is a flexible glue. It is not surgical like 3408. It is a flexible cyanoacrylate, and the reason I'm going to do that is because wood moves. And this cherry is denser and a little bit, well, I don't know about harder, but it's denser than this pecan. And so it's going to move less than the pecan, but it's going to need to, with changes in humidity and the like, it's going to need to be able to move. So I want to use a flexible CA. It still bonds, but it doesn't crystallize and turn so hard that it will crack. And that just went right on, again, because the air was allowed to escape. Dead smack right in the middle. Beautiful. Beautiful. Back to our vernier caliper. Now our diameter should be close, but not the same. But we're going to go ahead and take our diameter of our lid once again. Boy, that just turned out so nice. That color is wonderful. And we're going to transfer that over. I've still got too much material. I have plenty to work with. So if I overshoot this, I still have room to work. All right, so we transfer that diameter, and we're just going to come down to that very carefully. And there's a lot of ways to do this. We come in with our spindle gouge here. And close. All right, then we come in from the side with our beading and parting tool. And we'll just give it a little press. We're very close, which we want to be. All right. Closer. All right, that's an exact fit right there. Now, we don't want a super hard jam here. At least I don't want a super hard jam here. I want it to have a little room. I want it to just set on there nicely and come off so you're not wrestling with it. You can see where we pinch a little here. So we're going to take that down from the side and just make it just a gentle slip fit. see how that works. That's what I want right there. Just bloop. Okay. Now it's too tall. I've got a gap. So we're going to just take it down. So we'll get it to where it fits. Flush. And then we'll just finish hollowing out that little part of the lid. The tool rest is a little bit high. You want the center of your tool in the center of the piece. You can see that really well with the hole in the middle there. Look at that fit. Oh, that is exactly what I was hoping for. It just sits on over it, and when you line it up, you almost can't tell that we parted that wood in half, then we made a box. I'm happy with that. I want that loose fit. That's intentional. Beautiful. That is lovely. And that way, you know, you can, if it's sitting and you see it from a distance, you're not going to notice it's two pieces. Or you can just offset it just a little bit. And people go, huh? And pick it. Oh, ooh, how cool. Oh, I love it. That turned out absolutely amazing. That's lovely. So we're just going to clean this part out. Remember that is an insert. That is not our hollow box. It's already been hollowed and sanded and is ready for finish. We just needed to match this up. So we got our bottom finished, top finished, and we want to get some finish all over our piece. So first thing we're going to do here is with a little nylon brush, get any bits of sawdust, sanding dust out of the saw kerfs. Not bad, not bad. We'll blow this surface off. We'll get some boiled linseed oil on all of it. Use our little concave base as a reservoir. Now I intentionally left kerf marks, a little bit of scuff and sand marks, all of that in here. This is a piece of barnwood. Although the inside has a nice finish and a nice smooth finish, the outside shouldn't. And if I had access to a saw with a blade the same size as the blade that was used to cut this piece of barnwood, I would have just used that to cut my bottom and my top to remove the tenons. I don't have a saw of this diameter, so the next best thing is to finish it, but finish it coarsely, which we did. Only sanded up to 180 grit,
You want to accentuate that barnwood. It's just phenomenal. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. Might not be to your taste. You might want a nice shiny box, but for me, this does it. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. This might end up being part of my personal permanent collection. I do believe I got this piece of pecan barnwood. It came from the same barn, from Joe over at Wood Heap, who is also a member of Worldwide Woodturners. And Joe sent me some of this pecan, thinking that it was some of the other, which now, of course, I'm blocking on the name because I'm trying to think about it and think about the story. Sarsaparilla. We thought it was sassafras. We thought it was sassafras because it came from the same barn. It was cut with the same saw, had the same kerf, and it was the same aged color. And it turned out to be pecan, not sassafras. But just as gorgeous as the sassafras. Really, really nice wood from Joe. I appreciate that. Look at this. Look at how cool this is. You can just tip it a little, intentionally a loose fit. I do not want a pop fit on this box, but with finish on it, you almost can't see the seam. How cool is that? I really, really like how this turned out. I'm very proud of this piece of work. Obviously, the BLO's got to soak in and get about 24 to 48 hours to cure. But that is my square box from our challenge. So again, the story, worldwidewoodturners.org. We meet every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And our demonstrator, Doug Miller, challenged us to make something square, or from a square, that you could tell was square. And I'd been turning this around and turning this around, and I tried to do it with a piece of walnut. Hush, baby. Hush. I tried to do it with a piece of walnut that I had squared up on the bandsaw and the belt sander and worked really hard to get it nice 90 degrees, and I did. I had it. It was square. Without a jointer and a planer, it was as square as a human can make it. And because I wasn't turning at high enough speed, all the edges tore. All the edges just flaked out. So lesson learned there, and I was able to come back and bring you this incredible natural edge box, we'll call it, Barnwood box. I just find this to be absolutely delightful. I think this is gorgeous, if I do say so myself. Check us out, worldwidewoodturners.org, Wednesday nights. Also, check out the newsletter that I am the editor of. It is the artwork from the club, and Munchie likes it. Publishes every 2 weeks, and you can actually buy the entirety of the artwork from the year 2004 and the artwork from the year 2005 in a single bound volume on Amazon. Just go to Amazon.com and look for Worldwide, or for Woodturners Worldwide. That is the name of our newsletter, and I will put links in the description for that. But come join the club. It's really easy. You just come to a meeting and you're a member. That's it. There's no dues. It's free. And I have learned so much from the weekly demonstrations at Worldwide Woodturners, and happen to have the honor of being one of the demonstrators for Worldwide Woodturners. So please check us out, worldwidewoodturners.org. And while you're there, click on the tab for Level Up. We'll talk about that more soon.